Politicians say they're working for the people, but what if they're actually afraid of real change? Shocking, right? Here's a jaw-dropping fact: nearly 75% of voters feel their government doesn't listen to them. But here's the catch: politicians often avoid change because it threatens their power and the system that keeps them in control. They fear what could happen if they take bold action. What if everything they've worked for crumbled in an instant? In this video, we're digging deep into why politicians are terrified of real change. We'll explore the hidden truths behind closed doors, the money that fuels their decisions, and why they often put their own careers before the needs of the people. Stick with us to uncover the shocking reasons they resist change. It's not just about politics, it's personal. Chapter 1: The Power of the Status Quo. Why change is a threat. Politicians thrive on stability. The status quo is their comfort zone. Any drastic change risks shaking up their power structure. They prefer incremental shifts that won't rock the boat. Why? Because significant change challenges their control and influence. When you're at the top, any alteration can feel like a threat to your position. Politicians spend years building a network of support, and that takes time and effort. Real change could wipe out their carefully crafted relationships in a heartbeat. According to political scientist Thomas Ferguson, politicians are often more interested in preserving their relationships with money and power than serving the people. This preservation of power keeps them from endorsing bold reforms. Research from the Pew Research Center shows that 70% of voters feel politicians don't act in their best interest, yet the system remains the same. It's this fear of losing what they have that makes them avoid real change. Chapter 2: Behind Closed Doors. The fear of losing influence. Politics isn't just about public debates and speeches. It's about deals made in closed rooms. These deals secure influence and guarantee future power. Real change threatens these behind-the-scenes arrangements. Politicians often fear that a sudden shift could lead to a loss of the leverage they have over colleagues and donors. A 2018 survey found that 65% of politicians admitted to making compromises in exchange for campaign funds. They fear that reform could eliminate the influence of lobbyists or special interest groups, leaving them powerless. The author of The Corruption of Capitalism, Guy Standing, argues that this system of power exchange has turned politics into a business. When money talks, democracy listens less, he says. If politicians push for real change, they risk losing the alliances that keep them in power. Chapter 3: The People's Voice versus the Political Machine. Who really wins? Politicians are supposed to represent the people, right? But when push comes to shove, it's often the political machine that calls the shots. A well-oiled political machine keeps the machinery of government running smoothly, but it also ensures that those in charge don't face too many disruptions. Public opinion may demand change, but the political machine has its own agenda. A study by Gallup found that only 20% of Americans believe their voices are heard by their elected officials. Politicians fear that real change would upset this delicate balance. A shift in power could break the comfortable alliances that make the system work, at least, for those currently in power. It's a fight between what's good for the people and what's good for the political system, and unfortunately, the latter often wins out. Don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth discussions on how politics really works. Chapter 4: Risking Re-election. Why radical ideas are political suicide. One of the greatest fears for any politician is losing re-election. And real change often comes with the risk of political suicide. Bold ideas, like universal health care or a complete overhaul of the tax system, are a hard sell to voters. Why? Because they sound too radical. Politicians know that proposing drastic reforms can turn off the very people they need to stay in office. A 2019 report from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that elected officials who support policies that significantly deviate from the norm are less likely to be re-elected. Politicians fear alienating their base. They know that a sudden shift could make them appear out of touch with voters, resulting in a loss of support. As former US President Barack Obama once said, "Change is the law of life. And those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future." However, in politics, change often feels like a threat. Chapter 5: The Corruption Conundrum. How real change threatens big money. Money and politics go hand in hand. Big donors fuel campaigns, and those donors want politicians to keep the system as it is. Real change often threatens this flow of money. Politicians are afraid that any reform could upset their financial backers. Corporations and wealthy individuals often fund the campaigns of those who align with their interests. In fact, 2017 research by the Center for Responsive Politics showed that nearly 40% of congressional campaigns were funded by just 1% of the population. Real change, like campaign finance reform, would cut off this critical source of money. Politicians fear that any attempt to limit donations or corporate influence would leave them with fewer resources for their campaigns. This fear often leads them to reject meaningful reforms that would benefit the majority. Chapter 6: Psychology of Power. Why politicians struggle to let go. Power is addictive. The longer a politician holds office, the more difficult it is to let go. They've invested years, sometimes decades, in building their careers and influence. Real change, especially if it threatens their position, forces them to confront the fact that they may lose everything. According to The Psychology of Power by David Kipnis, people in power often develop a blind spot when it comes to change. They focus more on preserving their position than on what might benefit the greater good. The result? A resistance to any reforms that could threaten their control. Politicians often rely on their position to maintain their self-worth. Losing that power can feel like losing their identity. This psychological attachment to power makes real change not just a political challenge but a deeply personal one. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more insights on why change is so hard to achieve in politics.